just open right up with why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and your comics and stuff like that, all the things you like.
Well, that's a lot of things, but sure. Yeah, I'm a writer for and about comics. I've written comics such as Tales from the Bully Pulpit, Ectoplasm. I wrote The Tick for a while. Currently writing a webcomic called The Mummy Sabbatical. I also write about comics for the website comicsalliance.com, where I write about comics history, comics trivia, that kind of stuff. I also run a Tumblr blog where I answer questions about classical mythology, hagiography, Latin language stuff, or very frequently Christmas lore.
Mm. Exactly our kind of nerdery.
Pretty far up our alley.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Christmas, it's the happiest time of the year. It's kids jingle belling and whatnot, and but not always, right? That's a relatively recent innovation in Christmas, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah, basically since the advent of electrical light, pretty much. Because, I do get the question frequently. In fact, I think I have a question in my Tumblr Ask Box right now from someone asking about that line in the most wonderful time of the year. Why do you tell scary ghost stories at Christmas? And the answer to that is because Christmas is dark and it's cold, and before we had indoor heating and electrical lights, probably you would die. And so
probably.
Yeah, greater than average statistically, you probably die. And so, yeah, for that reason, for hundreds of years, Christmas was a time, much like Halloween, that was considered to be a time when the border between this world and the next is thinner. And so you have all sorts of scary stuff out. Fairies would be out at this time. Witches, werewolves especially are associated with Christmas. Goblins, trolls, that kind of stuff. Sometimes you get lore where that's a result of witches, for example, being angry about the holy season of Christmas, and so they would be out causing trouble. Sometimes, with the case of werewolves, the idea is that for some reason, I guess, Jesus would get jealous, and so if you're born during the 12 days of Christmas, you're cursed to be a werewolf, because you're trying to show up Jesus on his birthday. And so, yeah, there's a long history of all sorts of darker stuff in the Christmas season, and it's really only in the Victorian era when lighting first, gaslight, and then later electrical light, that we start to be able to relax a little bit at the Christmas season.
Does it also have to do with the solstice? Because that's the longest night of the year, right? And it's right before Christmas.
Oh, for sure. And especially in Scandinavian countries where it's particularly dark for a longer period of time, they really celebrate. One of their big celebrations is St. Lucy's Day on December 13th, which on the older calendar would have been the longest night of the year. And so they definitely focus on the light of St. Lucy there. And so candles and the candle wreath crown are a big part of the celebration there, having to do with trying to provide light during the darkest time.
Right. So we have, I forgot to put in questions about werewolves, but Christmas is particularly a werewolf holiday. So we got werewolves,
I know
witches,
what the thumbnail for this video is going to be.
Oh, okay. It's a lot of the traditions that we associate with Halloween originally tagged to Christmas. Were they all like Christmas traditions, and did we move them to Halloween, or they were on both holidays? Like when it came time to sort of sanitize Christmas and make it a little bit cheerier.
A lot of those, a lot of them are kind of from both. I'm not sure. They're both similar originally kind of holidays, and so the things like going door to door, demanding treats, that is still a tradition in some areas for Christmas. I mean, it's not. We still have caroling, which is a similar kind of thing, but would have been wassailing at first, or you would have had in the 1900s you have the Calathumpian bands, where street bands of people who are not particularly good at music would go and play terrible music until you gave them something to go away. And sometimes they would even, excuse me, sometimes they would even come into your house and just start playing music, and you'd have to give them food until they left. But even costumes, wearing costumes to go door to door demanding treats. That's a tradition with Christmas in some places. For example, again, Scandinavia, the Yule goat, which now is just a tradition, more or less, of a giant straw goat that gets burnt down every year. But it used to be
lasted 1 day this year, right?
Not even a whole day. Yes, a few hours before the Gevle goat got burnt down. There's another one in Iceland that I think maybe hasn't burnt yet. I don't know. I haven't checked in on that one. But the original Yule goat tradition was one similar to English mumming practices, and similar to, in Wales they do the Mari Lwyd tradition where this skeletal horse goes around caroling and demanding treats. But also, so the Yule goat would have originally been a person in a goat or goat-like costume, a mask and everything, surrounded by characters similar to like Mummer's stock characters or Commedia dell'arte style characters. You might have Punch and Judy with them or whatever, and they would go around and similar to those bands, they would come in and they might do a little play, or they might do a song, or basically they'd come in and annoy you until you gave them some food and they left. And so traditions like that of guising, putting on disguise and going door to door, those go way back. Some of those go as far back as Saturnalia, even. That would be a tradition.
Yeah. I'll when we post this too, we'll put in show notes, of course, and we'll put it on our Facebook. And I'll definitely have to put in there's some vintage footage I found of the Mari Lwyd from Wales, and it's basically, particularly for a child, it's basically pants-crappingly terrifying. It's made from the skeleton of a horse, and there's like a person with a sheet underneath, and it goes door to door like snapping at you, and there's got to be just generations of Welsh children with just many disorders. Sure. Father, I'll let you take the next question, because I know every internet nerd who is watching or listening to this who has an interest about the dark side in Christmas is wondering about a particular figure.
Oh, maybe you mean Krampus?
I do indeed.
Yeah, so Krampus is hot right now, huh?
Yeah, pretty hot.
So for the three people who might exist in the world who don't know who Krampus is, why don't you give us a quick rundown of that?
Sure. The Krampus, or the Krampus, or the Krampus, is one of a number of dark companions of St. Nicholas, common in Europe, especially in the Alpine regions. There are dozens of variations. The Krampus is just the one that's become the most popular, but there's you've got the Klaubauf, you've got Pelzebach, Bartle, Belzebul, Hans Trap, Hans Muff, and then dozens of similar figures, including the Perchten, the train of the goddess Perchta, and they do a similar kind of thing where they do a parade through the street and they're in scary costumes. And so the idea is that the Krampus is one of, he comes with St. Nicholas on St. Nicholas Day, or St. Nicholas Eve, rather, December 5th. And his job is to punish the naughty children where St. Nicholas gives rewards. And so he's a goat-like demon person, similar to a satyr in a lot of ways, usually wearing chains, bells, carrying a bundle of switches, a basket on his back. And the idea is that particularly naughty children get thrown into the basket, and they're either from there dragged to hell or thrown into the river or something like that. And then throughout Alpine regions, Austria, especially, they do Krampus runs on December 5th, where they have a whole parade of just people in various Krampus costumes. They come through and they, ring bells or spin fire or whatever, to the delight or the terror of children, depending on what kind of child is looking on, I guess.
Parenting was way easier back then, huh?
Oh, for sure.
sorry to interrupt, but we need your help. Talk Gnosis and all of the shows on the Gnostic Wisdom Network are free and will always be free, but it does cost us a lot of time and money to actually make these shows. So what I'd like to ask is that if you have enjoyed our programming, if you've found something useful about it, if you've been educated, please consider becoming a patron over on our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/Gnostic. That's patreon.com/Gnostic. We've got a whole bunch of new shows that we'd like to start making, but we can't do it until we can start to support ourselves a little bit more financially. And we really hope that you will assist us in our goals. We've got a great show coming up about sex and spirituality with Reverend Mr. Jonathan Stewart from Talk Gnosis and his wife Sarah Beale. We've got the Lost Word coming back, esoteric Freemasonry and fraternal orders and initiatory orders and all that kind of thing. We've got Temples and Tentacles with some weird fiction authors, kind of Lovecraftian spirituality stuff that I think you're really going to like. Plus some really interesting kind of fictional and kind of entertainment-based things that we want to do that also have kind of an esoteric and Gnostic educational component. So please, we need your help to make all of this possible. We have big dreams, but we don't have a lot of resources to make those dreams a reality. So please do visit patreon.com/Gnostic if you haven't already, and pledge. You just give a small amount of money for every educational media thing that we put out. And then at the end of the month, your card gets charged. You can set an upper limit so that you're never surprised by too many things getting charged on your card per month. It's really very easy and very painless, and it makes a huge difference to the Gnostic educational ministry of the Gnostic Wisdom Network, the Apostolic Johannite Church, and all of us here who work so hard to bring you this, what we think anyway, is pretty great content. So if you agree, that's patreon.com/Gnostic. Sorry again for the interruption, and back to the show. So, yeah, what do you attribute the resurgence of Krampus? Do you think it's just, people are into spooky stuff generally, and this is kind of a subversion of the, 1950s Christmas Bing Crosby kind of thing, or?
I think it is definitely the latter, where people are reacting to something that feels subversive towards Christmas, which to me is ironic since it's a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. So trying to be subversive to tradition.
Everything old is new again.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think there's kind of a post-modern irony or something to it, where it's like if you're overwhelmed by or uninterested in the commercialism of traditional mainstream Christmas, now you suddenly have this kind of like darker alternative, and I think that's part of the appeal for a lot of people is they see some of the saccharine sweet style merchandising and marketing for, you see your Santa Claus and your reindeers and all these things that are for kids, and they want something that feels darker, feels more mature, that feels subversive, that feels like they're getting away with something. That's part of the appeal for some people.
I hear the movie was fantastic. I haven't seen it yet, but everybody who I know that enjoys horror movies thought that Krampus was the best horror movie of last year. So,
that movie is really good from a movie standpoint. Like, it's a really good kind of dark comedy horror. The cast is really good. Toni Collette, Adam Scott, they're really good. From the perspective of being true to real Krampus lore, it's pretty bad, but. But it's a good-looking, fast-paced, fun movie to watch. Actually, a surprising number of Krampus movies. The other, really notable one from last year is an anthology film called A Christmas Horror Story that just went up on Netflix, or at least American Netflix. I don't know about other places.
Sorry, Jonathan.
But it's pretty good, and does have it's an anthology. But it does have a Krampus storyline in it, and so that one's pretty good. But I've also recently discovered a whole batch of really terrible, low-budget Krampus movies that I first saw on the rack for like $4 at Walmart, and some of them I found on Amazon Prime. I started watching this one called Krampus: The Reckoning. It is real bad. It is real bad. It's about this little watch the end. So they're going to reveal something, because I know they've shown enough that the little girl is not actually as young as she seems, but she's got a little like Krampus doll. It's basically like a voodoo doll, and she can pull the shackles off of him, and then someone will be killed by this awfully rendered CGI Krampus. And the acting is really bad. Everything about it is terrible. Definitely watch it. It's awful.
So, Benito, a few years ago, you wrote an article for Comics Alliance to talk about how Krampus is a misunderstood figure by his recent embracement in pop culture. That he's understood or misunderstood as the dark side of Saint Nicholas. Could you explain that misconception and how he actually represents a central metaphor for Christmas?
Sure. Yeah, I've even recently gone as far to say that Krampus has to be good, or else love has failed and Christmas is meaningless. And
it's a strong statement.
I mostly mean that. I do mostly mean that sincerely. Yeah, the thing is that in a lot of modern popular conceptions of Krampus is that he's the dark opponent of Santa Claus. That like there's some kind of Manichaean duality between the good Santa and an evil Krampus devil, right? But that's not the case at all. They're not battling against each other. It's not Santa has to stop the Krampus or else he's going to ruin Christmas. I see that's the plot of a lot of Krampus material, right? Even Grant Morrison and Dan Mora's excellent Klaus miniseries from this past year that gives the origin of Santa. It ends with Santa having a giant battle against Krampus, and he fights him in space, and then he catches him on fire, whatever. But like that one was particularly surprising to me, with some of the similarities to themes from All-Star Superman that Grant Morrison would not realize that Krampus has to be a tale of redemption, because at the center of the Christmas season, and not just Christmas, but Saturnalia, Yule, even literally the winter solstice from an astronomical point of view. Like literally the point of Christmas is that everything is as dark as it's going to get, but now the sun is coming back. The light is coming back, right? And so Christmas has to be about hope for tomorrow, hope for a better future. Something better is coming. That's the Christian thing, right? The Messiah is here now. A thrill of hope. The weary soul rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Right? You've got that, but again, even from an astronomical point of view, tomorrow is going to be a little less dark than it was today. And so it's got to be about things in the future getting better. And so you look at Krampus. First of all, he's not the enemy of St. Nicholas because they're always together. They hang out. They show up in the same sleigh. They ride the same horse or the same jalopy, depending on what decade your postcards are from. But St. Nicholas is not going to hang out with someone who is evil. The chains that he wears represent the fact that he has been he's been captured. He's doing penance for any past crimes he might have done, which presumably were actually harming children. But now, you can see that with Krampus. You can see that with, for example, the French analog would be Père Fouettard, who is the whipping father. He specifically has the origin that he is from probably the most famous St. Nicholas miracle, the story of the three boys. He's the butcher who kills the three young men and puts them in the pickle barrel, and St. Nicholas resurrects them. And as a result, to do penance for that, he becomes St. Nicholas's assistant and has to go and help delight children. And to me, that's got to be the story of Krampus and the Cloudbath and Père Fouettard and Hans Trapp and all these guys. They've got to be different guys who were doing wrong. They've been captured. They've been converted. They're wearing chains as a sign of their penance. As Marley says, the chains they forged in life. And now they have to go out and they have to do service to humanity. And that's what it's got to be about. St. Nicholas is about not punishing these guys. He doesn't set them on fire. He doesn't send them off to hell. He drafts them into service to do good. And that's what St. Nicholas is about. That's what Santa is about. That's what Christmas has got to be about. Second chances, a chance to right old wrongs. It's a new year. It's a new time. The light is coming back. Do better, right? And that's what it's got to be. That's what Krampus has to be. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
That was very awesome, yeah. Okay, so I didn't want to make this podcast just, although I would also love to do that, and that would entertain at least me. I'll have a little digression, starting from, Advent until Candlemas. I just follow my wife around the house, spewing out interesting facts about Christmas. Uh, she she gets a little annoyed about by the fifth week. So I just didn't want to turn this into us asking you interesting Christmas stories from around the world. But caveat: Benito, Iceland, like
Yeah.
WTF Iceland. Like, could you talk a little bit about some of the dark figures, plural, the many of them that haunt that place at Christmas?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Iceland is particularly dark, metaphorically, because it's particularly dark, literally. So, taking that as the premise that I set up earlier, that we have dark stories at this time, because it's physically dark. I mean, Iceland is dark longer and more than a lot of places, and so, but also, they're a place that take their lore very seriously. Even in a modern context, you can see stories about in Iceland where construction projects, building roads and things like that, are set off or are moved or postponed because people are legitimately concerned about the presence of elves in particular areas, and they don't want to upset them. And so, yeah, Iceland is a kind of place where those kind of stories are very prominent. And so, yeah, you've got very old stories that are still modern, that today have been somewhat influenced by mainstream American Santa Claus, which is true of just about everywhere. I mean, lots of places have their own particular gift giver, that a lot of them are a lot more Santa-like. In Finland, the Yule goat that I was talking about used to be a scary goat person who demanded presents. Now in Finland, Joulupuki, the Yule goat, is just Santa Claus, right? He's got a goat-like beard, but otherwise he's just Santa Claus. And so, for example, the gift givers in Iceland didn't even used to be gift givers. They are the 12 brothers, the Yule, who have a number of names, like, let's see if I can remember them. I definitely don't remember them in Icelandic. But you have guys like Sausage Stealer, Stubby, Sheepcoat Clod, and so on. And these are 12 different guys who basically go around trying to ruin your Christmas, originally, at least, right? They would sneak into your sheep pens and suck the teats of your sheep until they were dry and could not give milk anymore. Or they would swipe your sausages from the rafters while they were smoking, or they would eat all of your leaf bread, or they would eat all of your skyr, which is yogurt, things that are particularly popular at Christmas time. Or the guy that comes last would eat your candles, which would have been a rare treat for Icelandic children in the old days. Candles being made of tallow, they would have been edible, I guess. But but these guys now are much more. Now they're gift givers. They come. It's still, the idea is one comes a day, 12 days before Christmas, and then they leave one by one in the 12 days of Christmas. But now they bring gifts. They'll leave you a small gift on your shoe or on the mantle or on your window pane or whatever. And usually on Christmas Day, you'll see them when they're all there, and they'll actually be wearing very similar red and white, similar to Santa suits, and they have beards, and they look like 12 Santa Clauses, basically. Now they'll come to they go to like the National Museum in probably Reykjavik. I don't remember, but they go there, and children will see them there, and they'll go around, and like one of the brothers, Spoon Licker, will act weird if he sees Spoon, and so on, right? But yeah, they used to be more sinister, as used to be true of a lot of these figures. They are the children of the still sinister Grilla, who is an ogress who eats children, and throughout the year she stays up in her cave, and she listens for misbehaving children, and she will eat them. She has X number of tails, and on each tail is a bag, and in each bag can hold 20 children or something like that. and she's ogress or a troll or whatever, and they live out in these lava fields, which are out there, which are believed to have trolls and ghosts and such in them. Rila is so evil that she's now on her third husband, having eaten the previous two for being too lazy, or various other reasons. And famously, her pet cat, the Yule cat, who is an enormous black cat that, if you do not receive new clothes in time for Christmas, will eat you. Which definitely is one of those kind of didactic stories where the idea is, you need new clothes because it's really cold, and if you don't have new clothes, bad things will happen to you. So, you tell children, rather than saying you'll die of hypothermia, instead you say a giant cat will eat you, and that's easier for a child to grasp, I guess.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my grandmother always got me pajamas, and I was always a little disappointed because I wanted a He-Man or something. But if she had told me that if she did not give me pajamas, a demon cat would murder me, I would have liked him a lot more.
Yeah. I never knew how grateful I should have been to my grandma for all those disappointing boxes full of khakis or whatever.
So we touched on this a little bit before, but the basically my thesis is that even for 99.9% of people, and people who don't even like Christmas, it's almost an oppressively happy time of the year. So we're blowing some minds, but letting them know about its sort of shadow. But what kind of ruins my thesis is the most famous Christmas story of them all, besides the Nativity, would be Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and it's an effing ghost story. Is this something he just made up? Did he just decide that a great way to celebrate a holly jolly Christmas would be to write a ghost story, or is he tapping into some sort of contemporary tradition, or is he aware of this darker side of Christmas? Is it all coming from his creativity? So if you could talk about that.
Oh, sure. No, he's for sure following that tradition that already exists of a darker side of Christmas. And Christmas and ghost stories, like the song says, those actually go back a ways. And in fact, in the UK, still on the BBC, they always have a ghost story for Christmas, and they show a scary movie. And some really classic ghost stories, M.R. James and things, have been adapted specifically as Christmas specials in the UK. Dickens in fact wrote a number of ghost stories or similar for Christmas, not just the Christmas Carol, of course, is the most famous one. He wrote The Bells, which is about goblins. There's another one about goblins who kidnap a sexton at Christmas. Several others that have supernatural themes in it. And he's not the only one. At that time, there were very popular literary collections that would come out at Christmas time. Poe, a lot of his stories debuted at Christmas, and they would have books with titles, something like A Ghost Story for Christmas or something along those lines. And so, no, Dickens for sure wasn't creating that, but he is responsible for a lot of the popularity of Christmas, to be honest, because prior to Dickens, Christmas was not incredibly popular in England. It was not popular in the U.S. It was not something celebrated. The founding fathers of the U.S. would not have celebrated Christmas so much. Those from the English tradition come down from Puritans, who in fact they outlawed Christmas in the 1600s. So many of the Puritans who came over to the U.S. would not have celebrated Christmas at all, or really any holiday. But certainly in England as well, during the time of the Regency period, Cromwell and his ilk would have outlawed Christmas. And so its celebration was not quite as boisterous as we think of it now, and it had a lot to do with, first, in the U.S. it had to do with German immigrants, but in England a lot of it had to do with Dickens, who said, we need something, we're forgetting Christmas and we need to bring it back. And so he popularizes, he kind of is the guy who brings Christmas back, and we say Merry Christmas because that's what Dickens said. So yeah, he does start a lot of things, but he does not start the tradition of associating Christmas with ghosts.
So it's popular. There's kind of popular memes that float around this time of the year that everything that's sort of fun and interesting, as well as some of this dark stuff that we see in Christmas, are all pagan holdovers. I think of the Christmas tree, and I got to say, there is something pagan about cutting down a tree, bringing it into my house, and decorating it, and then worshiping it with presents. But so. But like as a classicist, like you already mentioned Saturnalia a few times. Like, do you see a lot of Saturnalia left in Christmas? Did we when Christianity happened, did it just take that stuff over? Does all that duality just come from the pagan side, or is there some sort of like some kind of mix? Is there still like sort of a dark side even in the Christian imagination? And is there sort of Christian elements to some of these traditions that may seem dark or strange, or aren't just nativity traditions?
Well, it is a mix. There is some Saturnalia. Obviously, there's no evidence, and in fact, evidence to the contrary that the birth of Jesus happened, in December. In fact, it probably was in the spring. Yeah, so you set the celebration there because Saturnalia, during the 4th century AD, during the Roman Empire, when Christianity starts to become a major thing there. Yeah, you do see it move there to adopt some of the traditions, and the Romans were always good at syncretism, right? That was one of the main things that caused the success of the Romans, and before them the Hellenists, and the fact that they were able to take native traditions and incorporate them into their own beliefs and make something that appealed to both sides. And so it's not really surprising to me that Christmas could be syncretized in that way, because you can look at something like in Saturnalia, where the tradition of giving gifts can be, then you say, well, Jesus received gifts from the Magi, and so that's a connection there, and so now we do that. Martin Luther did a lot of that during the Protestant Reformation. So a lot of the things that we have now, the Christmas tree in particular, were popularized by Martin Luther. He takes that as a symbol because, and it's a symbol specifically of Protestant Christmas, because prior to that you have the Nativity, the creche, which created by Thomas Aquinas. And he saw these as idolatrous, and ironically, I guess, but he saw them as idolatrous, and so he wanted an alternative to these statues of Jesus and Mary, and so he adopts the figure of the Christmas tree, which he likes for two main reasons. One, the triangular shape of it points toward heaven, and also reminds us of the Trinity. And so for that reason, he adopts that. He also would adopt wreath. And again, evergreen material works well for the Christian message of eternal life and resurrection and that kind of stuff. So yeah, a lot of it is definitely borrowed from more pagan traditions. A lot of stuff from Yule and Germanic traditions get added in. A lot of the things that we think of as really traditional Christmas come from Martin Luther trying to create a new separate track that is less Catholic and more Protestant, but it's been ironically more Germanic and pagan, I guess.
Yeah, that is definitely ironic. I didn't know about that. I'm from a small town, and when I go back home and visit for Christmas, there's always letters to the editor every year. I don't know why they publish them, but from perhaps people who are more on the fundamentalist or evangelical Christian side, just talking about how Christmas trees are straight pagan devilry. And so I didn't realize that they had originally been pumped up as a substitution for idol worship of the nativity scene. So I'll write a counter letter to the editor
because that always accomplishes so much.
That always does so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're up against our time here, but fascinating conversation. I really. Well, I learned a lot, quite frankly, and I want to go live in Iceland now. That sounds like a lot of fun. But anyway,
I will say just one real quick one. The weirdest one, not so dark, but to me, in my opinion, the weirdest Christmas gift giver is it's in Spain, in one of their autonomous communities. I don't remember which one it is. Maybe Galicia, maybe Asturias. I don't remember. Their gift giver is a guy named Apalpador, and what he does is his name, it means like the patter. It's related to palpate, right? And so he will sneak into your house and he'll pat the children's bellies while they're sleeping, and to hear if they're full or empty. And if the children's bellies are empty, he will leave them a big pile of hazelnuts. And that's he's a weird one, not a dark one, but a weird one.
Well, it could be depending on.
Yeah. And you find that weirder than a pooping log, Benito?
I'm really used to the pooping log.
You're
now.
used to the pooping
I actually
log.
had a friend of mine went to Catalonia, and he brought me back a Caganer that is Cogatillo. So it's 2 in 1. So it's your little pooping guy, but he is the pooping log at the same time. He poops out a little present on the figure. It's pretty great. I got it under my little Christmas tree that I have up on the mantle.
Wow. Very strange.
Okay.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you so much, Benito, for
Thank you.
joining us and for your interesting stories. And we're so glad to have you. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again sometime soon.